Our next two speakers are Tamir, Chief Product Officer of Pentera, and Yuval Lazar, Senior Security Researcher and Technical Product Manager. Let's tune in to their conversation about the fundamentals of security validation.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. As a security researcher, I'm constantly following the latest threats and trying to uncover new vulnerabilities. I understand the challenges organizations face on a daily basis in dealing with these threats across their growing attack surface. They are exposed with only a partial idea of what the potential impact is and how to validate the strength of the defenses. That's why I'm excited to be addressing this challenge head-on at Pentera. Today, I'm happy to talk with our Chief Product Officer, Tamir. Welcome, Ran. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you, and I'm excited to hear your insights.
Thanks, Yuval. Happy to be here.
So let's dive in. We're talking about security validation. It's such a broad term. What can you tell me that is more specific? Can you elaborate on what really is it and why is it so important?
Sure. So let's look at it from a high level, right? Organizations need to know where their exploitable security gaps are, so they can prevent the next cyber attack and manage the risks, right? Traditionally, when we look at organization, they've been using vulnerability focus approach, right, to address this need. And this approach is failing us.
Right.
There are way, right, you know that. Too many vulnerabilities. Vulnerability scanners generate thousands of critical vulnerabilities. Prioritization is only based on generic severity scores, with little or no context that is given to determine whether or not this vulnerability can actually be exploited in your network, and what will be the impact of exploitation. Even a medium vulnerability, right, find the crack, find a way to get a foothold, right, once you're in the network, right, even a medium level vulnerability can start a breach and then continue the attack. In addition, many organizations have limited visibility into exposure that are not necessarily right vulnerabilities, right? Misconfiguration, leaked credentials, and it really leads to wasted resources, right? You know, when we summarize it, vulnerability scanners are lacking the prioritization, right? It's not one size fits all. The impact, right? What will be the impact of breaching the vulnerability and coverage, right? Not looking at misconfigurations.
No, that's a very good summary of what is security validation. Very good points. Thank you. But how can we make it real? How can an organization actually do something about it?
Right. So to overcome the challenges I mentioned, we need to fundamentally change our mindset. And we are seeing the rise of a new approach, exposure management. And Gartner defines exposure management as combining the attackers and defenders' views to minimize enterprise exposure.
Well, what does it mean? Can you elaborate?
Exposure management has three main pillars, right? The first one is understanding the attack surface, right, both externally and internally, then prioritizing the vulnerabilities, and lastly, validation, right? Security validation is about determining which vulnerabilities can really be exploited by attackers, right? It really focuses on the most exploitable vulnerabilities that you should care about, right? By attackers in your environment, in real time, in production. It's about testing attackers' move to see how well your security controls are actually performing in detecting and blocking the attacks and validating their effectiveness. It's like a true reality check, right? Security validation has two main benefits, right? First, prioritization, right, of vulnerabilities vastly improved based on the results of the validation and the actual impact of exploiting the vulnerability to achieve a breach. This is the right way to prioritize vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation, to reduce exposure and optimize your security resources. Second, it improves your security readiness, by showing how well your existing security controls are performing to prevent attacks, right? Your EDR, SIEM, and so on. Can they actually detect and prevent the next ransomware attack, right? And by doing that, we reveal the gaps and allow you to fix them and, right, immediately retest and really see how you improve your overall defenses and, right, improve your readiness for the next attack.
So that sounds like a very interesting approach, but
It is.
it's a very radical change from what we're doing today and from what organizations are used to doing today. So how do you recommend organizations to get started with this? What can they do?
It is a radical change, but you can take, right, very simple steps to get started. The first step is gather information about the organization's entire attack surface through reconnaissance and enumeration. This is how an attacker would start, right? You know how it is. Also, any information that an attacker could collect and use, right? For example, leaked credentials for sale in the dark web that are associated with the organization account needs to be collected to assess potential threats. The best way to emulate a real attacker is to try to run varied techniques dynamically, step by step, until the goal is achieved, revealing the full attack kill chain. Attack steps are best run in your live IT environment, as close, right? You want to run it as close as possible to real attack scenarios, right? But obviously safe and controlled to avoid any potential service disruption, locked account, and so on. Automated security validation solutions such as Pentera let you perform testing at much greater speed and much greater scale than a human, right?
Yeah,
we know
it's not a
right.
pen tester coming in once a year, like giving you a report and leaving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And meaning you can really shorten the time to discover and remediate threats. In fact, many of our customers are using Pentera platform as a power tool for the security managers, right? Pen testers, purple and red teams, automating and scaling the tasks that are best done by machines while letting the security expert do what they excel at, investigating, right, those advanced threats and unique attack vectors.
So that sounds like a very cost-effective approach, like trusting the automation process and not trusting people or pen testers or anything like that.
That's right, and you know how difficult it is to find the right talent in an industry and the cost of that.
Hi, right talent. So what does a good security validation implementation look like? Can you give me an example?
Yep. So a good security validation implementation is continuous. Rather than relying only on annual or quarterly pen testing on specific segments of your network, security team can run tests as often as they needed, ensure they eliminate the exposure on a timely basis, right before the attackers find them. For example, routine testing of user credentials to identify changes that can lead to an account compromise might be done weekly or once a month. While the web attack surface, which is very exposed and vulnerable, might best test daily, depending on the potential business impact. In any case, we need to make sure that the validation frequency is equal or greater than the pace of changes to the network. Another critical practice is fast follow-up. In a good implementation, action is taken quickly to mitigate or remediate the highest priority exposures uncovered in the validation testing. After the fixes have been implemented, the testing is rerun immediately to validate that they work. This continuous improvement loop requires the use of automation technology, as well as the internal alignment between different groups. It's also about processes and culture. Attackers are getting more and more sophisticated. The only way, right, to beat them is continuous cycle of testing, prioritization, and remediation, right? That's the only way to ensure readiness and stay ahead of attackers and be able to block the next attack.
So thanks for that picture of what a good implementation looks like. But let's take a step back. When it comes to evaluating different security validation tools, what attributes are most important to consider?
First of all, look at the security coverage. How much of the external and internal attack surface is covered, as well as how many attack tactics, technologies, and methods are included. For example, can you validate your protection against a specific ransomware campaign? Mm-hmm. How well are your detection and response system able to detect and block such attack? Can you validate the security of your users' credentials? Can you validate your security across the entire network, both externally and internally, and also in the cloud? Ease of and flexibility of deployment is also very, very critical. What installation and configuration are needed? If you would like to run a solution on premises or in the cloud, is your preferred option supported? Do you need to deploy agents, right? No one wants to deploy agents.
We don't like agents. No.
Right, we already have too many of them, too many agents. Obviously, being agentless is key. We already have too many agents, and deploying additional agents to run attack simulation in most cases ends up limiting the scope of deployment due to installation and maintenance challenges. Ease of use, right? Very, very critical. Is the testing fully automated? And what step needs to be taken to set up the desired tests? Also, how easy it is to make use of the results and determine the right action based on the findings. Ideally, it should be easy to see, prioritize issues to fix based on the real overall impact, along with clear remediation guidelines. Right? Next, integrations are key, very, very important, right? You want to automate, be able to automatically open ticket in systems like ServiceNow to streamline remediation, tracking, and reporting, right? Reporting is also very critical. You want the right level of reporting, getting reports that are relevant for the different stakeholders, and use that for internal communication and fast action. This includes, for example, executive reports for the management team showing the overall security posture level, and trends, detailed reports for the security teams for remediation, and so on. Mm-hmm. Next is safety. Safety is very, very important. Look at solutions that give you an accurate view of your real exposure, but obviously without putting your business, operation, data, services, availability at risk.
So safety is a very crucial consideration.
It is.
I agree. So that's it, Ran. My final question for you.
Bring it on.
How do you recommend organizations to really get started? How can they do it?
Good question. So start by evaluating what is most important for you to protect. I would recommend starting for the more vulnerable areas of your network. We know our security is only strong as the weakest link, right? Attacker will look for where they can get in from the more vulnerable areas, and then potentially cross segments to where the critical data is. So really focus on the more vulnerable areas. Other specific assets that are more sensitive or at higher risk, you can also focus on them. Once you determine where you want to start, try out security validation tools to get a feel of the findings and the value you can get.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Ran. I think it's a very good way for organizations to get started on their security validation. So getting new insights into where the actual security exposures are based on real evidence gives immediate value from a risk reduction perspective, and can also help in raising security awareness from the executive level down throughout the whole organization. Thank you, Ran, for your insights, and thank you everyone for being with us today.
Thank you, Ran and Yuval. I feel empowered. You shared practical advice that can certainly help our audience tackle some of their daily pain points.